Okay.
Take two. It's like a movie. Take two. Maxine, Carolyn, David, Cheryl. We're going to start letting people in. So good morning to you all. You're in the US. We likely have people on the West Coast and the East Coast. Usually we also have people in Europe and the Middle East who it's their afternoon or slowly heading to bed. So we will give them a moment to sign up and then we'll kick off and we'll introduce you. Thank you very much for joining us today. And we've got quite a lineup with very well themed backgrounds. There is no doubt where today's guests are from. Cheryl, obviously I know you're hard at work behind the scenes on the Alumni Network, so looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that. And obviously you're on the route to the Alumni Network going live soon and your television program going live. So I think we're going to have to fit in a question or two about that at the end.
Got it.
We will give everybody a moment or two. And we also typically at the start of this ask a poll. So that's definitely worth flagging for all of you. You'll hear in a second that we'll ask a question to people about alumni networks. So for those that are joining today, and we've got people joining as we speak, lots of our regular guests, lots of our customers, great to see so many people on the line. And as usual, lots of continents indeed. Let's kick off with our poll. Let's get started. Let's ask some questions. And then, of course, the people on the line can ask you some questions as well. They'll be posting those in the chat room. So before we kick off a quick question for everybody except our guests today. What stage is your corporate alumni network at? Have you been thinking about alumni for less than a year, more than a year, launching soon, or nothing at all? Which is just a really good measure that we do and have done for years and years and years. And obviously, as time goes by, more and more people have been thinking about alumni for longer. So without further ado, let's get cracking on today's topic and with today's guests. For those who don't know that are joining us today, Northwell Health is New York's largest healthcare provider, serving New York, Long Island, and Westchester with compassionate care, and indeed has delivered the babies of quite a lot of our team, it turns out. The website describes you as many things, but as a network of collaborators, research pioneers, entrepreneurs, and educators that's 83,000 strong. And in many ways, that was really the summary that really resonated with me today, because really we're talking about some fairly pioneering and entrepreneurial things that Northwell Health has been doing over the last 6 months, and which news is out over the last couple of weeks. On the line today, we have got Maxine Carrington, who's the SVP and Chief People Officer. We've got Carolyn Doyle, who's a VP of Flex Staff. We'll learn a little bit about what that is in a moment. David Gill, who's the VP of Culture and Experience. And Cheryl Davidson, who's an AVP and is in charge of alumni relations. So today's community is for people who are involved in alumni and what comes from alumni. So I think we should start with that first, and then let's get to Flex Staff. But I think a couple of things. I'd like to ask first, what originally inspired Northwell Health to focus on alumni? And I think perhaps what we could do is perhaps hear, first of all, from Maxine quite briefly at a very top perspective. And then perhaps I can hear from all of you, because this is really what we're here for today. And I know you've all got different perspectives on why this matters.
Yeah, and Emma, thank you so much again for the opportunity. And I won't say good morning, depending on your time zone. I'll just say greetings to everyone. Right now, the team that you're meeting with, we are, I believe, all based in New York right now. And yes, we do serve the New York Metro, including Connecticut, New Jersey, and we've got affiliations literally all over the world. And so Northwell, number one, we like to say we're not a healthcare organization, we're a movement. And we're looking to raise the standard of health in every community that we can impact, certainly. And you will find that many of our team members, the 83,000 plus those who have moved on, still live in our communities, are still our patients, and still are engaging with us in some way. So that was part of the spark. It was this idea that we're still seeing them, we're still interacting with them. What does that relationship need to look like? David was developing the team member culture and experience, philosophy and strategy. And this concept that is happening both on the patient side, the community side, and we wanted to match that on the team member side, was around lifelong affinity. How do we have a relationship with you end to end? And if you are also our patient, and if you're also in our community and you also happen to work for us or have worked for us, how do we have that and maintain that relationship end to end? At the same time, we're looking at companies who are forming alumni networks, and those who have. We're all part of alumni networks through our colleges and universities. And you're looking at how they engage us, right? And maintaining that relationship. Workforce planning, those who have left, we know we've got in healthcare coming staff shortages, labor shortages. So how do we make sure we differentiate ourselves, maintain that relationship so that we can actually invite people back in who have stepped away? So it started serving multiple purposes as we would contemplate. And so ultimately we said, okay, definitely the boomerangs from a workforce planning standpoint. You'll hear about FlexStaff, Northwell's premier, led by the amazing Carolyn Doyle, staffing agency. Recruitment referrals, right? So from a workforce planning standpoint, we can activate these ambassadors to help us find people to come and work at Northwell. Philanthropy, you live in our communities, you're still our patients. How do we maintain that relationship and encourage you to give to us? While we have for-profit entities, our main enterprise is still a not-for-profit. And then brand ambassadorship and advocacy. And so you can talk us up, you can talk about us in communities, recommend us for care. And so we saw those benefits, made the case to the organization. The organization was on board. Enter Cheryl and David and Carolyn to help really bring the vision to life. And so it's been really amazing to see it take shape at this stage.
Thank you, Maxine. That was super comprehensive. And the other thing I really heard from that is that it's a two-way relationship, which is, I think, the fundamental tenet of a successful alumni program. It's not just what can we get from you, it's that actually we want to be helpful to you, which is, again, a lot of the things that we're discussing today. Maybe, David, because I'd like to hear from everyone just to kick off about alumni. Maybe, David, what you could answer for us in light of what Maxine just said is, what impact did you anticipate the program having on Northwell's culture and workforce? Because obviously that's what you most think about.
Right. And no, it's a great question. I think when we consider the overarching culture and the part that alumni play, let's view it as like the extension of. So individuals are going to come and have an experience here at Northwell, hopefully not only create an experience for their team members, but provide exceptional care. I want them to have that sort of extension far beyond when they leave and walk out the door. So I view the impact that an alumni program will have is that individuals who walk into Northwell don't just see it as a short-term thing. So it is more of Northwell becomes that larger pillar of the community that will be with them as long as they're part of the community. So I think that's where I would see from a cultural perspective that you'll have benefits. Yes, we could say from survey results and everything like that, but I do feel it's really an extension of community and seeing yourself within Northwell for a long period of time.
And that's often what healthcare is, right? It's a sort of life cycle relationship of taking care of you. So it very much fits. And I also want to flag, as I ask a question to Cheryl, that you are, I believe, the first company to launch an alumni network in the healthcare sector. So there are so many revolutions that are happening behind the scenes at your end. What feedback, Cheryl, have you been getting about the program, both from within and outside Northwell Health? Because right now it's pretty much an internal program. Launch is coming imminently. How have the early days been received at your end?
The feedback has really been phenomenal. People are very excited about this concept and about staying together and forming a continuing community. We have been reaching out to other healthcare organizations, and it's sparking their interest. Internally, we've been meeting one-to-one with our leaders, and they are looking at a variety of ways that this community can be an extension of the work that they're doing as well. When we speak to our alumni, they are very excited about having an opportunity to stay connected to the purpose and mission of Northwell Health, as well as to their former colleagues. And in many cases, some of them are interested in returning to us as a rehire.
Yeah, and Cheryl, I mean, you talked about embedding alumni effectively in the company, not just as a relationship. It's good to stay in touch, but you've just mentioned that there are internally, people are looking at how can we leverage alumni for the benefit of the business and also for those people that are in the community. So I think that leads nicely on to Carolyn, and perhaps you can tell us two things. You can tell us what FlexStaff is, which is in the title of our alumni, and people are probably wondering. And I guess perhaps we can just touch on how did Northwell Health develop its alumni network and internal staffing agency so early on to facilitate this return of retirees? Because there's a lot that's happened in the first 3 months of 2023 from you all.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks so much for this opportunity. Prior to joining the Northwell Health team, I actually spent 8 years as a vendor to Northwell. I led a staffing team for a former staffing agency that was a vendor to Northwell. So I had that sort of view of Northwell as my client. And then the Northwell team, I think led by our HR and talent acquisition team, decided that they wanted to bring that contingent labor agency internal. And so we began having conversations. And in 2014, I came on board as an employee to lead that effort. And, who knew back in 2014 what that ride would be like? We started, really looking at it as an opportunity to improve the quality of our contingent labor workforce. And we certainly did that. And it also was an opportunity for us to really look at expense mitigation and the money that we were spending with external agencies. And then, of course, in 2020, with the onset of the pandemic, one of the, it's interesting from a retiree standpoint, one of the pools that we looked at in terms of how we're going to get enough care to the bedside was our retirees, who were the nurses and clinicians and other former Northwell employees that used to work here that we can reach out to bring on through FlexStaff, our internal agency, so that we can get the care that we needed to the bedside. So that was sort of our first sort of informal opportunity to bring retirees back into the organization. Today, we have more than 4,000 employees that are FlexStaff employees that provide staffing to the organization. About 3,000 of those employees work on a weekly basis. And we're always looking for opportunities to look at different pools. Referrals are always our best opportunity to bring new candidates on. So I have to say that I was thrilled to death when I heard that we were going to be formalizing this process through an alumni network. And the early results are really very, very positive.
Yes, thank you very much for that insight, Carolyn. And I have to say, one of the things I have felt very personally is that actually alumni fits culturally very well for Northwell. It's something that everybody either is looking at or has or actions in some kind of way, but it's clearly just an embedded part of company culture to keep those relationships going. So it's a really great ecosystem. It's incredible to see before the even formal launch, you've already been working together. I wonder if, for the benefit of the people that are on the line, who are all from a variety of corporates and organizations at different stages of alumni network, if we could just touch on the initial process of starting a network. And David, perhaps you want to touch on that. How did that really start and come about? And I'd love, for the benefit of people listening, to understand who you brought along with you on the journey internally, because people that are thinking of starting a network, it's often like you, huge organizations. Where do I start? And how do I bring people with me? Could you touch on that, David?
Absolutely. And I think some of the information that Maxine shared at the onset of ensuring that we had the appropriate sort of buy-in from the most senior leaders in the organization. But it did stem from that idea of, yes, we knew that there was an opportunity to leverage alumni to continue to contribute in some way to the organization. And we knew that there were organizations and industries that already do this well, whether you think about consulting firms, whether you think about within education. We knew there those industries already did it. Where was the opportunity within healthcare? So we started first through what we call, let's call it our standard sort of listening approaches, where we actually sat down with some individuals within educational settings, some students, and found out what are the types of things that they would be interested in. And we captured those data. And then we met with some individuals who recently sort of exited the organization or sort of at the precipice of exiting, and found out what would be of interest for them to stay connected. I think and through that process of listening, understanding where we can leverage the information and build out a program is what led us to sort of further go down path. I think the opportunities have been phenomenal and will continue once we launch. But it was all around where were the opportunities, what are the populations that currently do it, what industries do it, and what can we shamelessly steal from them and put in place within the healthcare sort of environment.
Well, that's what best practice is, David, isn't
There
it?
you go.
It's learning from the best and stealing, borrowing, reflecting, you know. Yeah, as they say, you know, that's the best form of flattery to imitate. So I'm sure that you picked all of the best things out. And Cheryl, you have a lot to do right now because you're getting ready for the formal launch. There's a lot of excitement internally about this, a lot of excitement externally about this. What led to Northwell Health launching a program to welcome retirees back to work simultaneously? Because, you know, in an organization of your size and scale, and with a network that's going to be as sizable as yours is, you have to pick your battles about what you do first. So how did that come about that you chose to do that right now?
Well, this was really Maxine's vision of how we can create this lifelong affinity and inclusion. We don't want that kind of connection to end when they are no longer a team member for all of the reasons that Maxine had mentioned earlier. So what we had done is look at what we currently are offering our team members and see how we can translate that into our alumni community. We offer a lot to our team members in wellness, virtual yoga, support groups, through our learning, our podcasts, through our seminars, through our book clubs, through our career performance and development. They can continue to grow their career. And we're offering all of these kinds of opportunities to our alumni with the hope that they stay connected with us and that they even return as a rehire.
Yeah, if I could jump in as well, just on retirees. I mean, we know what the data tells us, the stats show us, forget nationally, globally, one, that folks are retiring later in life. People are working longer. They're looking for ways to contribute and stay connected to meaning and purpose, right? Longer. And you could see, I mean, so many folks who even have retired returning to the workforce for financial or other reasons. And so I think just the timing is helpful in that regard as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maxine, for that. I mean, so the opportunity is very clearly there. Perhaps you could continue on and just share what are the challenges that Northwell is facing in implementing this and how they've been overcome. Can you touch on that?
Our CEO will always say we don't have challenges, we have opportunities. Michael Dowling is one of the most optimistic human beings you will ever encounter in this life. And, you know, for us, it's scale. Number one, when you're, you know, a large size organization, everything from how you communicate it to how you influence to how you get buy-in and how you build. But this is a team that survived a pandemic and had to quickly innovate and quickly put new processes in place and activate in every way imaginable. And I think we always have that for perspective, what we've done certainly before the pandemic, what we did during, and even coming through it. And so it might seem initially as a challenge, and then we just have to remember what we were able to accomplish during that time that Cheryl referenced and Carolyn, and then that helps fuel us. And so I think scale is number one, certainly data. You know, you want to make sure you've got clean information. We have decided as an organization to go back to engage those who left us from 2017 to date. So that was a deliberate decision. We didn't want this to be too amorphous. We wanted to contain it a little bit. And then the data needs to be clean. You know, practically, did these folks leave on good terms? That's important as well. Certainly. And then, you know, the technology, and we're grateful for the partner that we have found in your firm working with us. Yes. So thank you for that. And then the legal pieces, right? You just want to make sure you're engaging in the right way. If these are retirees returning to work, that can impact everything from pension to Social Security. So we want to make sure they have that information so they're making informed decisions as well. And so the team has cleared literally every hurdle imaginable to get to this launch point.
Incredible. I mean, it's clearly a team effort at Northwell. Whenever we have any conversations, and when I've come in myself, there's a lot of positivity and collaboration that takes place. Mm-hmm. I mean, Maxine, what you really talked about and that kind of much wider net that you're pulling in is a contingent labour force that hadn't previously been tapped in your alumni in a very programmatic way. Right. So I guess one for Carolyn, following on from that, what kinds of short-term and long-term opportunities will retirees, do you think, have available to them? What benefits are expected for them? I mean, how does it work right now? And is this really just a way to sort of upgrade and make this programmatic? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So the types of roles, I think sometimes when they hear, okay, we're a health system, that the roles are strictly clinical, and we do have a great deal of clinical roles. Mm-hmm. And we've already had some early success where we have nurses and other clinicians looking to join the network and to work as part of alum staff. But we also have, Maxine can speak to the numbers better than I can, but we also have a great deal of employees that are in non-clinical roles and leaders. And we've begun to see opportunities for chief nursing execs that have, retired. And we have a CIO on our list, a chief information officer. And I think as we begin to enter new phases of the program, we'll see more and more retirees look to come back. I think the greatest benefit for them is really, of course, a win-win for both Northwell and for the retiree. I know myself, even speaking, when I get to that point, I can't imagine just retiring and sort of, not working at all anymore. And that's what we're hearing from some of the retirees, that they want to sort of ease into retirement. And that presents an opportunity for us to provide them with more flexible opportunities. So many of the retirees that we've spoken to and that are expressing an interest in this opportunity are saying, can I either go back and work in my my former site or my former department, or because FlexStaff places employees across the entire health system, we're a centralized team that places contingent labor across all of Northwell. We can also provide potential opportunities for these retirees across the organization. So if there's not a need in their former department, maybe there's a need at a different site. And so they've really been, and the other piece that we're hearing from them is that, they don't necessarily want to work full time. Maybe they want to have a flexible schedule. Maybe they want to have 20 hours a week. And we're working with them to try and find those types of opportunities. The types of roles, again, are clinical. It could be a nurse educator. It can be a nurse. Sometimes we're finding that we have nurses that work in our acute care settings, our hospitals. They might be a critical care nurse. And maybe as they go into retirement, they don't want to have another opportunity in a critical care setting because it's a very intense and demanding environment. But maybe they want to work in one of our vaccination pods where they're vaccinated, it's a little bit of an easier, or they want to work in our clinical call center. There are many, many opportunities across the health system. And then I would say on the non-clinical side, it's similar. I mentioned the chief nursing officer who retired from one of our community hospitals. That particular hospital was in the process of pursuing magnet certification, a magnet designation. And this was a great opportunity to take her, her career-long experience and expertise and apply it to having applying for this magnet designation. So she's working with the new chief nursing officer of that site and working on the application. And really, it's just such a win-win situation where she's able to provide that expertise. So the types of jobs are really, as many jobs as we have are the types of opportunities that we have.
Amazing. I mean, ultimately, you're making it easy for people to work the way they want, at the time they want, the amount they want, which is clearly good for everyone. It makes great business sense, and it just makes great personal sense. It's the kind of thing that really creates genuine loyalty, which of course I don't have to tell you because you've chosen to do it. And Carolyn, you use the word alum staff. Who knew when you kicked FlexStaff off that you could point out. I don't think I've ever heard it used formally outside of Enterprise Alumni, which is another reason why when Cheryl sent me the message about this, I was like, I love that. You really are, you really are the pioneers that you talk about. Does FlexStaff, and it might be one also for you, Carolyn, does FlexStaff have a special approach for interviewing or managing alumni to get them interviewed and onboarded? Because, of course, these are people that already know you in some way. Potentially, they might be faster to onboard. They might be slower to onboard because they haven't been working for a long time. Is there any process around that you can talk to?
Yeah, I think one of the things that, because this is such a valuable pool of potential candidates, been working very closely with Cheryl and her team to really sort of be thoughtful around how we're bringing alumni back. And so what we've done within FlexStaff is to put a single point of contact. So right now it's still relatively small. We're still sort of in the pilot stage, but I have a single person that is responsible for really providing that white glove service to onboard these candidates, potentially for the second time as they come on board at alum staff. But they do still have to go through most of the same onboarding that they would have previously gone through, just because of the requirements for healthcare.
Yes, obviously healthcare has its own nuances, but I wondered, Maxine, from a kind of company structural perspective, as a result of having a effectively new large pool of contingent labor that haven't quite been harnessed, are you having to rethink anything about the employee life cycle or anything about the kind of wider strategy about how you implement everything from not just software, but to the people who roll this out?
Yeah, so the team is thinking I paid you or something because you teed it up really nicely for me to comment on a couple
that wasn't
things.
even on my list of questions. I was thinking it while Carolyn spoke.
Yeah, good. We're aligned. I think, number one, to the earlier comment, this concept of the gig economy was something we saw years ago. So for everything Carolyn said about the launch of FlexStaff, understanding one, it would benefit us, but two, people we knew reading the tea leaves, right, looking for more and more gig opportunities. And that has ballooned, right, the gig economy. And so we've looked to do that in so many different ways. We're so grateful for Flex as we launched Alumni because the marriage is perfect and it's benefiting us. The other thing you mentioned about these pools of talent, this is very much core to our workforce planning strategy. So whether it's people with disabilities, veterans, people who've been involved in the justice system. We've even launched last year a returnship program for caregivers who've been out of the workforce at least 2 years to give them a path back to work. And our third cohort, I just met with them actually this week, has started. And so these multiple opportunities and avenues to tap pools of talent, to your point, that either historically haven't been or we haven't been historically tapping. And so you're just seeing all of that come together really well right now and play off of each other as well. And it just demonstrates our commitment for sure.
Thank you very much. And David, a few questions for you that tag on to that, if I may. When you think about culture, which no doubt you do a lot, alumni are actually part of your workforce. They're just external and have left you, but they're not strangers to you. Do you expect, if we first touch on alumni before we think about FlexStaff, but do you expect alumni to touch on, to impact your current employees? Because of course we're talking about post-employee engagement, people have left. Is it something that you've thought about in terms of impact on people that currently work for you?
Absolutely. I think there, as Carolyn pointed out, there's that opportunity for alumni to come back and play a role. So if we just focus on retirees for a moment, that concept of sort of mentorship and even knowledge sharing and training, and in some cases coaching, that is something that you can sort of dig into a lot more. An individual, when they leave, they walk out with a lot of knowledge. And a lot of times they may walk out with a feeling of I haven't quite finished my to-do list. So now it provides them an opportunity to do that. That will have an immediate sort of positive impact. And then the other component, I would say, when you have the concept of alumni and what it will do for the culture, I think it changes how a leader may interact with their team member. If you know you're in a lifelong relationship with someone, you may take a different approach, right? It just causes you to think a little bit differently that, okay, I may not interact with them I'll interact with them now for say a period of 2 to 3 years, but I will run into them again. So how am I interacting? How am I guiding them? It almost makes you take a stance of, I want to ensure that this individual is going to grow to be the best that they can, so that I see an even bigger person, a bigger self of that when I interact with them later.
I guess it encourages a little bit more investment on both sides in that relationship, right?
Absolutely.
It's just a little bit less flimsy and flighty. And of course, you can't account for everybody. People bring different kinds of selves to work, but one hopes that people say to themselves, okay, maybe I'm just here for a while. Maybe I'm in the New York area for a couple of years only, but this is going to be a part of my journey where I'm going to take more with me than just, a paycheck for a short period of time. And David, can I then twist that question slightly round another way and say, Maxine talked about some of the people that you potentially going to be bringing back, and they might be staff that are from urgent care, they might be administrative staff, they may be very senior people who are looking for something a little bit different. Is there any thought process around the impact on your employees of those sorts of people? Because presumably it must be really fantastic to think about, okay, this person worked for Northwell for 25 years, took some time back and is coming off. I personally, as an employee, would love to meet someone that's got that kind of history with the company. It's a whole different perspective. It's a whole different community. Have you thought about any element of how employees and flex staff might be able to interact in some way or share wisdoms or memories?
Love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's that opportunity to have, let's call it an alum speaker series, where you bring individuals that may be senior executives or former senior executives to come back to talk and share with individuals that may be at different stages in their career, to share back some of the learnings. Even if you even turn that around a little bit, there's probably even the potential for reverse mentoring, where an individual that may be earlier on in a career may offer someone some advice that may be later on and sort of proceeding through retirement. I would venture to say, or I would personally say that, quite honestly, everybody in the organization is probably just at different stages of being alumni. So as they sort of move through the process, they'll, soon to be an alumni. And I think that interaction with individuals that have left, as well as individuals that are there, really can strengthen the culture.
Yeah, I absolutely. I remember a few years ago talking to someone in a very large company about their Rising Stars program and their internal mentoring. And we had a really interesting discussion around how, of course, people inside the company can really help guide someone's career, because they actively know who you need to go to for help, which department you might need to speak to in order about advancing an idea, whatever it might be. But actually, sometimes people don't necessarily want to talk to somebody who is embedded inside the organization right now about something that's a little bit challenging or tactical, or where there might be, where you sometimes want a little bit more impartiality. So no doubt, if I think about what's to come from you, there will be wonderful ways that we'll see overlapping.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Cheryl, I'm going to ask some questions of you now of alumni, because really that's the foundation for getting this pool of people together. There are, if I think about the over a decade, many customer conversations I have, I remember, I started the business. I remember almost all of them. And one of the things that I really remember you mentioning when we talked early on, as you were on the journey to alumni, was you talking about a widow who was part of your alumni, and how you could bring together a community for her, because she felt a little bit lonely and really wanted to be part of the workforce, but and that was just one of the most human things I'd ever heard as a use case of alumni. There's all these beautiful communities that I know that you're looking at how to pull together, but you have to start somewhere. So where are you now on the alumni journey, Cheryl? Can you give us a quick update as to where you are around launch and plans, and then perhaps we can talk to some topics around that?
We currently have our coming soon page for anyone that is just about to leave or has recently left the health system, where they can just go in and put in their email, and what we'll do is stay in touch with them until we have our formal launch within the next few weeks. And that formal launch we are incredibly excited about because Enterprise Alumni has so many opportunities for us to create these kinds of affinity groups. What we hear as we are talking to alumni, there are a variety of ways that they want to stay connected and ways that we want them to stay connected. So we are looking at affinity groups for our physicians and our residents for a specific group where they can get individualized kinds of education. They can work collegially together on different projects. We're also hearing from our alumni that they want the social aspect of coming together. So they can create that in ways that we're offering a lot of our social impact activities to alumni. When we have our Northwell walks, we're creating alumni teams to participate in those kinds of walks. We're also looking at, as David mentioned, how can we use the knowledge and the skills that our alumni bring to help our current workforce as well, whether it be as mentors or speakers. We have a lot of partnerships with schools. We're looking to see how alumni can supplement the school participation that we have when we mentor students, or can they become faculty in some of the colleges that we have affiliations with. What's so exciting about the alumni program is that it can go in so many different directions that with each person we speak to, we're learning more and more about what their interests and needs are and ways that we can make this happen.
It sounds like, Cheryl, you're on a journey to embed this in company culture quite quickly. And actually, there's a gentleman called Professor Matt Call. I must share an article that he recently wrote for the Wall Street Journal where he's talking about if you embed alumni culturally early on, it benefits everybody and it benefits every department. But of course, Cheryl, there's only one you, so you can't do it at the same time. I guess you have an added benefit in some ways to events, collegiality, and community, because despite being 83,000 plus, you're in a fairly specific geographical location. Of course, some of your alumni have moved further away, but you do have that sort of benefit of having a very big heart in the New York State area. Cheryl, another question for you, if I may. How is Northwell going to measure the success of this program? Because you have so many things that you're thinking about, and I think you've also got the benefit of a very sizable potential community. So I wonder whether year one, very often size of community and getting it live is just at the heart of the program. Are there any other metrics or thoughts that you have about your journey to metrics that would be useful to share with the people that are listening? Would be a first question. Then I have one more, and then maybe we can kind of go back out to the kind of wider impact of alumni on the business.
Absolutely. To your point, Emma, one metric is the number of people that do register. But we really want to see how people are engaged, not just I registered and maybe I'll go on the website once a year. We want to measure who is participating in our activities, whether they be virtual or online, who is interested in alum staff and looking to come back. As what we're doing with alum staff is we are creating consultancy roles. So there's a lot of flexibility in the kinds of roles they can come back into. So right now we just launched, as Carolyn said, we already do have participants, but we're looking to see over time how that increases, particularly with our leaders. Are we able to reduce consultancy fees if we have our leaders come back? We know they know the culture, we know they know the work that we do. There are really looking at ways that we can also, you have the NPS score. So how do we know if our alumni are posting on Glassdoor and acting as brand ambassadors for us? We're looking at those kinds of measures as well. So some of them are very concrete and tangible. Some of them are a little bit more broad-based as brand ambassadors, and looking at the kinds of posts that we get, the kinds of interests that we get, and the kinds of real real sense of growth in the community and participation in particular.
That's very interesting. Thank you. And as I mentioned to you before we kicked off, there are people external to your community that are already watching. You know, you've got C-suite, top 5 largest banks in the world, people that are commenting about some of the stuff you're doing. I wonder if I could ask a question that comes from one of the people joining today, but I wonder if I could ask all of you to answer it from a slightly different perspective. So Felicia Granger, who is from a healthcare organization, a very large one based in Canada, has asked what the support structure looks like for your alumni network. Knowing what you know now, are there tips to build resourcing and sustainment plans? I'm going to kick off with a point or two, and then I'd love to ask each of you to comment in your own ecosystems. A lot of companies start with minimal resources, a couple of hours a week to get started, because sometimes that's all that they can muster internally whilst knowing this is crucial. And some have a team and some have really large teams. So it's very varying. And you've obviously had massive internal buy-in. So I wonder whether I can start with Maxine, from your perspective, what this looks like, because obviously this is something that fits into, this is something that's been placed at the heart of employee life cycle at a very senior level. Can you talk to how you thought about this? And then let's work our way through the rest of the panel.
Absolutely. You know, when you're incubating a concept and testing it out and developing the business case and, you know, assessing what you're going to need, you know, there's a now vision and there's a full maturity vision. The now vision, we knew, to your point, we were going to start small. So I think what was important first was to find the right leader who, based on their experience, based on their existing relationships and network, could literally take on the form of 5 people, because they bring to bear that experience and so much more. And, you know, looking at Cheryl's track record for what she had built before in other roles in the organization, you know, we really thought to ourselves, she's the right person. One, it gives her an opportunity, as we like to do, to stretch team members into other spaces, give them new challenges, and she was up for it. Thankfully, she said yes. Thank you again, Cheryl. But two, just knowing all that she was going to bring would be helpful. The maturity, the relationship building, all of those things, and the experience. So that was one. Then we knew we would have to scale through existing resources in the organization. So while we may not have everyone on kind of the payroll within the CSR team, we're using the vast network that exists through Northwell. So our marketing team is engaged, our communications team, our tech teams are, you know, and you can keep going. And by committee, everyone is serving in the best interest of this being realized, you know. And then eventually, I think like with any other organization, you'll want an alumni board of volunteers, of alumni who can help start to really further lift the momentum for us by taking on some of the boots on the ground tasks, right? And the networking and all that we would need to do. And then I think we'll incrementally build the team as the value is demonstrated, you know, to all the metrics Cheryl described. And we'll just keep building to get to a point where we feel like this is it. This is where we need to be. Yeah.
Well, it's like everything in life, right? Once you get to A, then you're at B, then you think
That's
about
right.
C.
That's right.
And alumni
We're
board is a
assessing.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a journey, right? Bite-sized chunks, as you say.
That's right.
An alumni board is something that not that many people do, but is a brilliant idea, because ultimately that's what you want. You want outside voices. You want just not just internal investment, but external investment. And I'm going to quickly say, there was our last webinar was with Reid Hoffman and Chris Ye, and obviously Reid co-founded LinkedIn. And one of the things we talked about is how alumni leaders are actually, they are entrepreneurs, because they are, and we're not suggesting anybody else isn't, but typically people start alumni networks and really get them off the ground day to day are doing a lot with a little, with 100 ideas. And it's just like, you know, and that is typically, you know, the definition of an entrepreneur. So internally, it's a really entrepreneurial project. David, I wonder if I can ask you next, because obviously, you know, I know that you are a critical sponsor of alumni from a culture leadership perspective. How did you think about, okay, we've got enough to get going. What else do we need in the near term? Can you talk to that a little bit for Felicia?
Yeah, absolutely. It does start small. I do feel like we have enough to fill a roadmap for the next 3 to 5 years, but it's what's going to be most impactful based on what the alumni are asking for. So starting off small, providing those sort of pulling together of resources of a lot of things that we're already doing. We know as a healthcare company, how are we ensuring that we're providing information about well-being to our alumni and allowing them to leverage that, and then digging into the concept of connection. So at the very root of a network, allowing for those opportunities for connection. But it's really, let's call it, this phase is really all about starting small and building that community and showing the value in the community. And I think you all heard it here. Max said, as long as we show continued support and success.
I knew that. David is ready for our budget process.
Yeah, just sort of setting us up now.
Yes.
But,
Well, David, you let us know if you want a copy of this recording, and we'll amplify.
Exhibit A.
Exhibit A, yeah.
100%. Don't worry.
But I do think it's
team.
definitely starting from a small, bite-sizable approaches.
Yeah, and you can't do anything without the community, right? So actually, we always say it's all the goals in the world you can have, but the first year is getting people in the basket. We'll come to Cheryl, who has a lot of this work sitting on her shoulders in a second. Carolyn, I wanted to ask you how you think about this, because you've obviously got this kind of crucial agency model, which services, no doubt, I imagine the more people you have that you can put into jobs, the better. So it's a never-ending desire for talent. How are you thinking about helping the alumni network in order to get you those people into the job? Because presumably at some point, part of official offboarding will be, please join the alumni network. You'll have your systems talking to each other. But in the meantime, I'm wondering, is it going through your head every time someone signs up for the alumni network? Ooh, can I reach out to them as a flex staff potential candidate? How's that working?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think about it sort of in the reverse, where when Cheryl had come to me, she's really helping flex staff to solve our day-to-day issue, which is how do we find the most highly qualified contingent labor in service to Northwell. And so for us, I feel like I'm part of the community that Maxine mentioned in her response. You know, how is Cheryl sort of putting her arms around other colleagues and other leaders within the organization to say, either, you know, can you help the alumni network on our journey to stand this up? Or in my case, I feel like it's Cheryl coming to me saying, let me help you solve an issue within flex staff, which is finding the most highly qualified employees. So for me, I have open arms, and I just say to Cheryl, you know, let me know what I can give back to you in this regard. And, you know, to sort of piggyback on the comment that she made about the consultants, you know, we've had some early success already. And one of the things that, you know, we talked about and I made a commitment to is, you know, in addition to having that white glove service for retirees who are coming back into the organization, I've also made a commitment to Cheryl and Maxine and team to provide feedback regarding, you know, who's working, where are they working, you know, how many hours are they, you know, are we saving those consultancy fees, you know, really just feedback on key metrics back to the organization where we can really begin to develop that proof of concept so that David can be successful in the budget process.
Yeah. What a team. What a team. Well, you know, ultimately, Carolyn, also the feedback that you can share to other alumni is going to inspire other people, not because some people have an impediment to feeling like they can go back to work. So I think there's also, you know, that sharing is actually mutually beneficial, because we all know that there is sometimes a certain type of person who's hesitant to reach out or hesitant to think that they can come back to work. So that absolutely makes sense. And the white glove service makes sense too, because ultimately alumni are a little bit different. They're not strangers, and you know, can continue to make people feel part of a family, which is, you know, you're doing it every touch point. Then that's how you get more referrals. That's how it becomes a big, beautiful family, extended family. Now, Cheryl, there's a lot on your shoulders, and you're doing a magnificent job. And I remember also when we last spoke, you know, there are so many things you're thinking about that are all brilliant ideas and are really valuable. How are you prioritizing? Because as it happens, lots of organizations don't always have a full-time person to kick this off. Although I would always say it's simply the best way to ensure success quickly, right? Because there's so many moving parts in a large organization. You need a heart to be pulling all of the strings together. How are you managing to do all of this and get off what is essentially version 1, year 1 of this community? What's the secret sauce for everybody listening?
Well, we are very fortunate to have the support of leadership, no question about it, with Maxine and with David. Not only am I full-time, they were kind enough to give me a program manager, Catherine Graves, who has been our technical guru and just an incredible partner. So we have the resources to begin this journey. And then what is also so key is the partnerships we have with Flex staff, with our wellness team, with our career performance and development team, looking at what does Northwell currently offer that we can then use for our alumni. We look at what are the important initiatives that are just starting. Maxine just launched a Northwell Kids program. So every time I hear a program that is a priority for the health system, well, how can we then infuse that into the alumni program? How do we create an affinity group for parents and offer whatever we can to them as well? How can we utilize the great talent we have and have physicians, for pediatric physicians, speak to these parents or whatever the topics are that we're finding of interest? We're creating focus groups so that we constantly get feedback on what would be relevant and impactful. And that's really our guide on how to move forward with all of this.
Well, so Cheryl, you're never sleeping. That's the conclusion I've got from this. Either that, or you get more done in a day than any normal human being. Either one of those outcomes is a possibility. I've got one more question for each of you, perhaps, and then we're going to have to wrap up. But I think what I would love to start with is, David, again, everything about culture. Well, culture is at the heart of everything that we all do, I think, probably personally as well as professionally. So what are you hoping in the first year that alumni gives as a cultural benefit to Northwell? And in particular, I'd also like to hear from the perspective of Flex staff, how is a retiree going to add to that?
Yeah, I would love in the first year for the impact that the alumni program and the presence of alumni would have for every team member to see really this long-term connection and really a commitment. That it is more than just words on a wall, that we speak around the concept of lifelong affinity, wanting you to grow and thrive here, but also that we have a network, an established network that shows that even after you turn in your badge, you're still part of a Northwell community. So that's probably what I sort of take away in terms of the cultural aspect, that I want people to feel a certain way as they enter Northwell and as they leave.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. And Carolyn, one for you. For companies who are thinking about alumni, not just from a community perspective, but also from that retirees and flexible staff basis, have you got some advice about how to think about approaching alumni? Because some alumni are in full-time jobs, some are retired, some are somewhere in between. When you think about communicating with alumni, which is obviously in partnership with Cheryl and the alumni team, but when you think about communicating, is there a different way that you're thinking of communicating with alumni to the wider Flex staff audience that you typically reach out to? Because they are people that are closer to you, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I think about how we're communicating and engaging candidates to come into the sort of Flex staff organization, we do that largely through referrals, some social media, and the traditional recruitment methods. But on the retiree side, since we're really in the beginning stages, we've really been working very closely with Cheryl and Catherine to really engage that community to date. I don't know, Cheryl, if you want to speak to that more than I am, and they're sort of sending those retirees to Flex staff, and then we're sort of engaging them at that point. But, to just piggyback on the question that you asked, David, the other thing when I think about like what does success look like at the end of this year for alum staff, I think it's, are we solving a problem for the organization? You know what I mean? What is the value to Northwell? And then also the engagement of our retirees that came back into the organization. Did they feel like, this opportunity served what they were looking for, that they got the flexibility, that they got to stay connected? Did our pool of retirees continue to increase as the year progressed. But Cheryl, I don't know if you wanted to speak a little bit more since you're closer to the communication piece.
What we've been doing really is meeting with leaders and explaining to them about alum staff and how this can be a benefit to them, as well as an interim if they are looking for a full-time person. Here, at least you can fulfill an immediate need with someone from alum staff. So we've been reaching out one-to-one with leaders to hear what they would be looking for as well. And then as we reach out to our alumni, we're hearing, as Carolyn said, many of them do want to stay connected. Many of them are still mission driven and want to give back. They just want a little bit more flexibility. So it's been a wonderful way to communicate both to our alumni and to our leaders. And really, it's a paradigm shift that we're trying to encourage, and looking at people as a lifelong employee, a lifelong connection. Because as somebody mentioned earlier, at some point, all 83,000 of us will be alumni, hopefully through retirement, but we will all be alumni.
100%. Well, look, two more questions, one for Maxine and then one broader one. Just to sort of end this off, the global healthcare industry is watching your pioneering steps, both from an alumni perspective and from a retiree program perspective. You know, when I look at all of the people that were interested today, it was large healthcare organizations all over the world who hadn't necessarily thought of doing this. Mm-hmm. As well as that, the talent challenge for all of us as leaders in businesses doesn't show any signs of letting up, but of course, skills requirements do evolve. So what are some of the longer term steps, plans, goals for Northwell Health's alumni program and tapping into retirees? What are you hoping to kind of look back on from a sort of board perspective when you think about how does this impact the wider organization? A huge question, but perhaps a good one to semi-end on before I ask one more thing.
Yeah, you know, it's one way to answer that. I think about the level of engagement in our organization. So Carolyn just expressed certainly the benefit we want to impart on those we're looking to support, given our mission, right? You're still in our community. We want to raise health. We want to raise the health of your household and you, and that relationship doesn't end to what David described earlier. But then there's a benefit to Carolyn's business, right? So our corporate university, they're ready because they're saying, great, alumni can come back and teach at our corporate university. Our fundraising arm, they just had an event down in Florida. Hey, can we access the alumni list? So there are folks living down in Florida who've left the organization. We can engage them. They can attend the event. And so you're starting to see everyone waking up to the possibilities that exist to benefit the organization in so many ways. And so I think it's us growing more of that. And I think eventually you're seeing this recruitment marketplace. You're seeing the storytelling, the human piece that you talked about earlier. How do we amplify those stories to benefit people, benefit from the wisdom, benefit from the experience? What should I be looking forward to as I prepare for that stage in life? What's going to happen to me, right? How can I make sure I'm landing safely and well? It can still contribute. So I think we're seeing all of those. And then the net promoter sentiment piece that Cheryl described earlier, that people are speaking more positively about Northwell, care referrals, recruitment referrals, all of it, it's benefiting the organization. So when I look down the road, I'm seeing all of those as business benefits. But again, ultimately the mission of our organization being fully realized as well, raising health, ultimately.
Brilliant. Well, look, a perfect place to end the conversation about alumni and flex staff. But finally, I have to add, you're the only client that we have that has a Netflix show.
We actually have a couple, but not bragging or anything like that.
Well, exactly. I mean, like, it's big time. So are alumni going to get any special sneak peeks? Have anybody asked you about that? Because we have customers that have asked us about that, and we have lots of staff across the US who all watched the first series. So we have to end on a slightly different note. What's the deal with the show, and are alumni going to get any peeks?
We are definitely planning to engage alumni. The show is launching literally in the next couple of days. We have a Northwell nurse choir that made it to America's Got Talent in the finalist category. This is the second Netflix show. There's also a couple documentaries. And so definitely in the future, that'll be one of the featured benefits for alumni, discounts, early access to these types of experiences. Was literally just chatting with our head of marketing about that this morning. So definitely more to come. And Cheryl's got a grand vision for sure around all.
We are planning on a watch party for the next series.
Well, I hope that alumni technology providers are also invited. So I think I better leave on that note, because no one else who's listening to this is going to be able to currently top that with America's Got Talent and Netflix show. But we came today to listen and hear from you about not just how you are embedding alumni and rolling it out culturally, economically, financially, but also how you are thinking about how you can pull your retirees back into the workforce, which makes complete sense in the current environment and is good for everybody. So thank you for imparting your knowledge and sharing this. I know that everybody that listens to this will be really grateful, and we're all really excited to continue to watch it grow. Congratulations on being a real first in so many ways. And thank you to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, team. Thank you, Emma.